to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. It's Tom Dutta, like Butta, for those who don't know how to say it. And we still get it wrong, but that's okay. So welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. We're live streaming today. What does that mean? Well, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Rumble, and YouTube. So if you're on, you can actually chat with us, put a comment, and we'll put it on the screen, ask our guests. If you're on YouTube, we'd really like you to hit the like and subscribe to the channel. That helps the analytics, help us grow. I'm going to put something on the screen here to talk about. In the last couple of years, particularly in the last year, we've got some recognition. So I'm going to just tell you the show is exploding. We're booked out 3 months. We've done over 350 live stream interviews. We're rated number 2 by Feedspot out of California, number 2 in the top 30 Canada CEO podcast. Feedspot also gave us a top Canadian leadership podcast. And then Million Podcasts, these guys are great. They've given us top 100 life stories podcasts globally, top 10 Pacific Northwest leadership podcast, and top 10 Canadian leadership podcasts. So we're really excited about that as the show rolls. The only reason for that is because you're here and you support the show. So as we get rolling here, we do what we call the show opening, and it's a bit different. So I'm going to set this up, everyone, and then we'll bring on our guests in just a couple minutes. So stand by while I set this up on my dashboard here. All right, stand by. So what would it be like to get to know our guest from the inside out? What do you do when you discover that doing everything is right is not enough? You know, picture a penthouse suite in San Francisco, a grand piano, city lights spilling through the glass. And on the table sits a $40 million offer. Across the table sits a young CEO whose family has a net worth of almost nothing. And he says no. 25 years later, he calls that night his deepest professional regret. And today, he's going to tell us why. Now, my guess is the man Silicon Valley kept calling back. 6 companies, 6 exits, one sold for $400 million, one sold in a fire sale for $250,000. Now he's mentored by the legend they call the coach of Silicon Valley. And he sat beside an unknown Elon Musk at the Sydney Olympics before the world knew that name. He's laid off 50 people in a single day. One of them was his own father. And when war came to Ukraine, he offered to move his entire team and their families to safety, and they said no. And a week later, the tanks rolled in. Now, Hollywood taught us that failure is not an option. My guest spent 30 years learning the opposite. And then he wrote the book, 44 stories about luck, timing, loneliness, and the truth the glossy founder myth leaves out. And here's what you need to know about this man. He doesn't call himself a hero. He has failed publicly and painfully, and he'll tell you so because you can ask. And yet after all of it, he wants to walk back into the fire and do it a 7th time. Why? What does he know about failure that the rest of us are afraid to learn? Well, that is the story unfolding on this stage today. His name is Mike Grossman, and he is now a Quiet Warrior. And his story starts now. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, Mike.
Thanks very much, Tom. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Hey, Mike, what part of the world are you in? I know you're in America, but tell us what part.
I'm in California, specifically Palo Alto, California, not too far from Stanford.
Yeah, very cool. Have you lived there all your life?
No, I moved around a lot as a kid. I was born in Boston. I moved to Princeton for a period of time, and then we went back and forth when I was a little kid between Princeton and Rome. My father was a physicist at the time, and they had a particle accelerator out in Rome. So I went back and forth. Most of my childhood was in Westchester County outside of New York City, except for 1 year when my dad had a sabbatical at Stanford, very close to where I'm now sitting. And the family realized, wow, we really like it in California. So eventually, kind of via Australia, which is a big part of my story because that's where I met my wife, I ended up back in
very cool
California and Palo Alto.
And you sure have a worldview. Fascinating. And I know this is all bits from your book. And there's many threads there that crossed already. That's what we're doing, storytelling. So my wife's born in just outside of Rome, being there, and definitely traveled the world myself and been to some of your parts through work. Very interesting to hear about your father's background too. So, hey, Mike, I'm going to throw this out just to get you talking to me. So you just heard me welcome you to the show. I opened by asking our audience what a leader does when doing everything right is still not enough. You've spent 30 years living inside that question. And when you hear your story framed that way, like I did, what comes up in your mind?
I think when I was younger, I just assumed that if I worked hard, that I would do well or relatively well. And when I wasn't doing as well as I wanted, if I applied myself more, that I could control the outcome and have more success.
Yeah.
And what I ended up finding as a business professional, and specifically entrepreneur and entrepreneurial CEO, is that that's not really the way it works. At least it hasn't in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just can work your hardest and can do a good job, and you can be surrounded by a team of people that are all very committed and passionate and capable. And even if you do things well, for 1,000 reasons, you can fail.
Yeah.
And that's shocking when you realize it. And it certainly took me by surprise.
Well, that's exactly as we did the opening. We'll go back to it during the show. That's exactly the juxtaposition of work hard and success, and then you still can fail. That is a great lesson. So are you ready to go into Plato's Garden with me to tell some stories?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. I'll put something on the screen there, Mike, and let's stand by. All right, Mike Grossman, welcome to Plato's Garden. So, Mike, Plato was an Athenian philosopher. You can see it on the screen there. There's Aristotle and Plato. They're kind of walking and talking to each other. And in the ancient classical period in Greece, and Plato founded the school of thought called the Academy. It was the first institution of higher learning in the Western world, apparently. So what we're going to be doing today, and you don't even know this, Mike, but we're going to be weaving your story through 3 areas. And what we're doing is getting the influences of context that shaped you and your work. So the first one is macro. What was happening in the world around you and your work? 2 is mezzo. What was happening in the sector where you did your work that influenced it? And 3, my favorite, Mike, is micro. What was going on with the man, Mike? And so all of this, we're hoping the audience will sit back, critically think, and take it all, mesh it together, and find a deeper meaning about Mr. Mike Grossman. So let me take that off the screen. So we're going to get right into, let me put a different view on the screen there. Going to get right into micro. So Mike, take us back to a campus interview when you were 20 years old. It was going badly, and then you said one spontaneous sentence that changed the entire trajectory of your life. Walk us into that room and tell us what happened.
I wasn't sure what I wanted to do after I graduated from university, and a couple of my roommates were applying for jobs. And so I decided, maybe I should do that too. So I put together my resume, pretty quickly got an interview with one of the companies coming on campus. It was the management consulting firm McKinsey. And I wasn't prepared for the interview, quite frankly. I sort of only barely knew what they did. Came into the interview, as you said, it wasn't going very well the first 15 minutes, largely because the interviewer was tired of talking to people. I think he had spent the last 2 days doing that. And I realized that it wasn't really going all that well. And then he asked me a key question. He said, what are my long-term goals? And I gave an answer that was very authentic, but didn't focus on business specifically. I talked about an interest in living in a lot of different parts of the world, an interest in starting multiple companies, interest in having a family and getting married. And he gave me this very strange look, and I didn't know why. And in the moment, I did something really atypical for me because I very seldom curse. But in that moment, I leaned forward. I kind of jabbed my finger down on the table and I said, "That's not bullshit." And that was the key moment, because all of a sudden he decided I was interesting. And the last 15 minutes of the interview went great. He was very animated and energized. And the upshot was I ended up getting that job. And then there's a ripple effect that followed that many of the things that ended up happening in my life happened.
Yeah, incredible.
Because of that moment.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I'm going to put something else on the screen here. So just let me put an image up, and you tell us what this is. What is that we're looking at?
that's the book that I've written recently. Failure is an Option, which is an attempt to try to convey what it's really like to run an early stage innovative technology company that's venture capital funded.
Well, everybody, I'm gonna brag about it. Mike sent me one. Thank you so much, Mike. The cover is fascinating. There's this little cutout here. It looks like some kind of code. Is anything you want to tell us about the design of the cover? Why you did it that way?
Well, I give a lot of credit to the publishing company that helped with that design. I mean, the first thing was I wanted to say failure is an option when the famous line is failure is not an option. And then it seemed like it was an interesting way to convey that is cover up the word not with code that you might see.
It's very clever.
In Silicon Valley.
Yeah, one of the things I noted, because I've read it from cover to cover, I've also listened to the audiobook, and we're going to reveal something later about all this, that listening to the stories in it, there's certainly some interesting things. Here's why I liked it overall. I just took a sticky note here off my paper. It's thought-provoking, entertaining. So there's this fun side of you. There's dark humor. It's very cool. It gave me a sense of running an entrepreneurial tech company, particularly from what you've done in Silicon Valley. And it's unlike any other business book I've read, because the format of it seems to be small, chunky chapters where you can learn a lesson from each one. Comment on that if there's anything I missed or if I got that wrong.
No, it's exactly what I set out to do, was to try to write a business book that was in some sense, not a typical business book. And in many respects, I tried to transcend business to talk about things that are more generally applicable, because at the end of the day, business, entrepreneurial business, I think are microcosms of life. And I tried to capture that in the book. Although it's kind of funny the way I ended up writing it. There are these 44 separate stories that are largely separate from one another, and you can read them intentionally in any order.
Yeah,
that came about because when I decided to write a book, I wasn't sure how to go about doing it, and I thought for a while. I spent about half a day staring at my laptop, saying, "How the heck am I going to do this?" And then it occurred to me that for 25 years, I had written an annual holiday letter for our family. And it became a kind of creative writing exercise for me, where every year I tried to write in somebody else's voice within the family. Actually, one year it was one of our cats. I played with time. It was very creative. But the common theme was that these were 3 or 4 or 5-page stories that discuss something about what had happened the preceding year within the family. And so what I realized was I'm not really sure how to write a book in a kind of traditional sense, but I know how to write holiday letters. And so that's what I'm going to do in this book. I'm going to write 44, in effect, holiday letters, short stories, really.
Yeah.
And that's how the book ended up being developed.
Yeah, I mean, critically thinking here, the first thing I thought about after I read everything you do, and you have family and all this, is, the fact that you make time to write a holiday letter, especially being a Silicon Valley CEO, that's probably a story in itself. How do you balance? Let me put something else on the screen here just to show off on your behalf. What are we looking at there?
Oh, well, that's the audio book that I recorded, and which is available on Audible and Spotify
for sure.
And so on. Yeah, that was fun. I decided, well, if I'm going to write a book, why don't I have the whole experience? And that includes having an audio book. And then the publishing company said, well, okay, who do you want to hire to do the reading? And I thought, no, I'd like to do the reading. It's the stories that I'm telling are autobiographical. It's really my voice. So why don't I literally make it my voice? And I enjoyed it. So it was a fun process.
Well, I got to do this. Cheap applause for you there. The reason why I did that, Mike, is because my first book I wrote, I did an audiobook, but I was so chicken, like I was conscious about my own voice. So I hired a voice actor. And when I listened to yours, I was blown away. And I thought, man, it's so good. And here's the thing, everyone, I want to just tell you, if you get the physical book, which Mike, hold the physical book up again there quickly.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. There's the physical. Thanks, Mike. You can put that down. If you get the physical book and then you listen to an audiobook at the same time as you read, it's a completely different experience, everyone, because you're using different senses. And what it did is it connected me, Mike, to you deeply. I felt like I knew you, and even coming into this interview. So I'm going to get into micro again and Play-Doh. So we're going to throw another question out to talk about. And before I do that, I'm going to play something off the audiobook. And so I'm going to play this, and I just want to listen to it. I've sped it up. So I'm not going to ask you to talk about it yet. So just give me a thumbs up if you hear it. Here we go. It's called No Regrets. It's one of the chapters.
No regrets. My father has observed that no matter how old we get, we never stop asking ourselves the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? When I was 8, I wanted to be a pitcher for the New York Mets, like my favorite player, Tom Seaver. At 10, I hoped to be a medical doctor until on a cross-country trip with my parents and sister, I had the opportunity to visit the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and was astonished to realize that hospitals are full of sick people. At 12, I planned to pursue a career in politics. By 15, however, having repeatedly lost elections for student government, I concluded otherwise. Then at 17, I decided I wanted to become a serial entrepreneur.
Okay, so we're going to stop that there. And there's a reason why I put that up. So we're going to put a question out to you. You quit your job to co-found your first technology company when your wife was 9 months pregnant, and certain that hard work guaranteed success. And we just heard a bit from the audiobook. There's a lot more in there about your backstory. When did you first feel that certainty crack?
Certainty crack in terms of what exactly?
The certainty that, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to become a Silicon Valley CEO. Because one of the things that we heard there is there's all these things you wanted to do, and then your wife's pregnant, you've got a sure job or something going on, and then it's like in that something happened and changed and shifted you.
I felt a sense of urgency around doing this type of career for many years, but didn't see how we could financially make it work. And so I kept pushing it back. And then when my wife got pregnant, the situation became more urgent. I couldn't see how I could do everything. I was living in San Francisco. I was commuting about an hour each day. I had a pretty intense job at Intuit. And I was trying to do entrepreneurial things on the side. And on top of it, I was about to become a father. And so I realized something's got to give. And I really wanted to try to see if I could, go down this entrepreneurial path. I felt like I needed to. And thankfully, my wife was supportive, and both emotionally as well as practically. And so, literally the same day I left my job, she went into labor with our first kid.
Oh, that's pretty amazing.
Away we went.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about your wife now that you said that. I'm going to just play something here for you. Just and again, this is live streaming. We edit all this together later. Let me just put this on. Just 15 seconds here. Stand by.
Dedication. To Watsi. Every morning when I wake up, I think about the same two things: how I need to make the day count, and how grateful I am that you walked into my life. Dedication.
What a beautiful.
To Watsi.
What a beautiful thought that was to dedicate her. So you mentioned something about Australia. So just talk about your family for a minute, if you're able. I think Wati you met in Australia, but you've got an interesting family and great children too.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I met Wati in 1988. I had a summer job. Well, it was winter in Australia, but for me, it was a summer job at a law firm. And I met her within the first week. And now we've been together 38 years and married 36 years. And really, that was incredibly fortunate. In fact, the fact that I met her was so accidental because I had to get a job in the first place. But I was originally being sent to a different city, actually Brisbane, Australia, and they changed it at the last minute, sent me to Melbourne, and again, my life ended up pivoting because of things like that. We have 2 kids. They're both grown. Ironically, both of them are living in Australia right now, actually. The 30-year-old, the older one, the son, is living in Brisbane, the very place that they were going to send me first, and then at the law firm, and decided not to. And our daughter is 24 and living in Melbourne. So we're in California and our kids are in Australia.
Well, we'll pay honor to them on this show for sure, because they're here because of you and Wati. My mom, who passed away just 3 weeks ago, actually, she was 90, so bless her. My mother's sisters and my cousins, they're all doctors, lived in Australia. And so I have roots back there. My parents from Fiji and roots to India, but never been there, but I hear it's a beautiful place. So it's hopefully you can visit once in a while to see your kids. I'm going to get back into Plato's Garden here. So Mike, there's a moment in your story where a company layoff reached inside your own family. You had to let your dad go. I mentioned that in the intro. Take us inside that day. What did the two of you say to each other? And talk about your relationship today, or anything you want to tell us about that moment.
I mean, it was terrible, I have to say. We'd always been close, and the reason we ended up working together in the company was really opportunistic. I had co-founded this business that was really nothing more than a slide deck, but we needed somebody to run engineering, and it was exactly the moment in time when my father was looking to do something new. So he became the other co-founder, and it was the greatest professional experience of my life, thanks to working with him and also my best friend, the guy named Scott Belser, for the first few years. But eventually things got tougher, and there was a moment in time when we effectively ran out of money and needed to cut costs a lot in order to survive. And it wasn't possible to keep my father on the payroll. It wasn't just one day where he was told. I mean, it was a process over a few weeks where it became clear that this had to be done, and I needed to do it. I still feel badly about it, to be honest. I mean, I think it was necessary. I think that had I kept him on the team, it would have been regarded as nepotism, and I think accurately so, even though he's a brilliant guy. We were fighting for our lives. But it's very unpleasant. And thankfully, we're on great terms still. I was invited to Thanksgiving even after that happened.
Okay, well, that's good.
And so we've moved on. But it was painful, and
Sure.
It was, one of many painful experiences I've had in this kind of crazy career.
Yeah, well, I think it says a lot about character. And I think we all can listen to that story, everyone, and think about if your dad worked for you and you had to make that tough call. But I think that's why this book that Mike's written, his first book, Failure is an Option, is worth a read for anybody, in particular in business, because you have to make some of those tough decisions. I was reading somewhere about just the whole layoff factor, about, don't say, if you think the number is here, it's actually here or something. Just talk about that. There's some stuff in the book you mentioned around that whole topic.
Yeah, what I've generally seen through the years is that however many people you think you can lay off, you actually are able to lay more off. But it's so painful to do that it's often easier to be cautious about that. So yeah, there was one company at 125 people. We started hitting some challenges, and there was a board advisor who came in from Kleiner Perkins, one of the big venture capital firms. Didn't know that much about the company, but he had seen similar situations, and he asserted at a board meeting that we should go all the way from 125 down to 30. Well, I thought he didn't know what he was talking about. He had no experience with our company, didn't know any of the nuances that came out of that. And I thought, I'm not going to listen to that. So we ended up making a very significant cut from 125 down to 75. But then we were still struggling. And eventually I realized that we actually could have gone further. So 75 went down to 50. And then ultimately we took it all the way down to 30. So he was right all along, but I ended up doing it in multiple waves over a period of time, which cost the company a lot of money and really caused a lot of existential anxiety for people.
Sure.
Because if you don't just do it at one time, you do it multiple times, everybody's worried that it's going to happen again and again and again. So it was really a big mistake on my part. And these days, when I have a chance to mentor or coach first-time CEOs and they face a similar situation, I give them the same feedback that I was given back then. What do you think the number is? Okay, it's probably a lot larger than that. However unpleasant it is to deal with.
That's interesting. You're connecting to me personally here because my career is varied and as an executive. And there's another question coming up later, and I'll trade some stories. But I went through this myself in a big corporation and then in private company. And one of the things I just want to say, Mike, that I love about the book and just how you're talking is not all CEOs will admit their failures. And so I think that's one of the great things about the book you've written is there's great character in you, but we also learn this humility. And I think that in itself even teaches the reader if they're struggling. Like there's a lot of narcissistic leaders out there who can't admit their mistakes. So we learn through you. So thank you for that. I think it's time to just mention a bit about your background. One of the things I'll mention to the audience is on the audiobook, if you listen to it or read the book, they talk about Mike's background, but grounding this interview, I think it's important to know a bit about you, who you are. And let me just pull this out here. So the thing that fascinated me is you trained as a lawyer and then you ended up here. 6-time CEO of early stage venture funded Silicon Valley tech companies across 30 years. And then the companies you can talk about, various points. All 6 were acquired. Largest exit was 400 million, et cetera, et cetera. And then you hold a degree in economics and from Harvard. There's another degree, I think. Lawyer by training, admitted to the bar in New Jersey and District of Columbia, although you never practiced. We heard about McKinsey and Company, and there was something funny in here about baby wipes and diaper rash ointment. Can you tell us about that? Like, you were a pretty hands-on guy with stuff.
So to speak. Yeah. I was a brand manager for Johnson & Johnson in the Johnson's Baby Group. And
Okay.
So there was a moment in time when I, at least in a theoretical sense, was the world experts on babies' bottoms.
It's too funny. Okay, let's get back into Plato's Garden here. Are you having fun still?
Yes, definitely.
All right, good. All right, so we're in mezzo now, which is the sector. So how did the sector you're working in, and you can define it the way you want, I see it as the tech sector, as entrepreneurial business, as now authorship, so you're in the media sector. But how did that, all the things going on, influence the context of everything? So you were mentored for nearly a decade by Bill Campbell, the man Silicon Valley called the coach. For our audience who are international, who never met him, tell us about him. And what is the one lesson of his you still carry into every boardroom or conversations?
Bill was absolutely remarkable. He had a very interesting backstory. He was a college football coach initially, and coached assistant coach at Boston College, head coach at Columbia University. And when he got close to being 40, he decided that he was going to make a change and go into business. And he had a meteoric rise, very quickly ending up at Apple as the head of marketing and sales, and then ended up as the CEO of Intuit, and then ultimately ended up, as you mentioned, being known as the coach of Silicon Valley. He was the board member that Steve Jobs trusted most. He was the advisor that had the greatest impact on the founders and CEO of Google. But he also took under his wing a lot of people who were less well known, like myself, often trying to build entrepreneurial companies and doing it for the first time. And he had no agenda. He just did it because he wanted to be helpful. He wasn't trying to make money. He just wanted to be helpful. It was something that he really took a lot of pleasure in. And in some sense, with the book, what I've tried to do is pay it forward, is with the same sort of thinking in mind, is how can I do something that might be helpful to other people? And in terms of lessons that I learned from Bill, it's really that there's nothing more important than the team.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are at the epicenter of business, and I think that often the narrative around business forgets that. But I really believe it quite firmly. Certainly, Bill was one of the most empathetic people that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And he also was very pragmatic, and so he was uniquely good, I think, at marrying those two themes.
Yeah, no, it's great, everybody. Mike, hold the book up again there so we can use that as a clip later. Just read the title out loud.
Failure is an Option. Reflections of the Silicon Valley CEO.
Okay, very cool. Thanks. You can take that off there. Let me just get back. So one of the things I did when I read it is I tried to put the book into themes. You can see my paper here. I got my other camera. So I came up with 7 or 8 themes, and probably mostly wrong how I interpret, but you can fix that. And so one of them was theme 3 I had was money and people. So just comment on this when I say it to you. There were the 2 paired chapters I found, Bill Campbell's legacy and the Silicon Valley companies may have aspirational missions, but they're ruled by money. A business that runs out of money goes out of business, yet a company is nothing more than its people. Without them, there's no company. The craft of the job is holding both of those truths together. Comment on that if you can.
Yeah, I mean, running entrepreneurial companies in Silicon Valley is most definitely within a capitalistic context. I mean, the goal is to generate financial value, shareholder value. And so that clearly informs how you have to run these companies, because they're not nonprofits. Well, some of them are, but not intentionally. I mean, but the goal is to actually build a big transformative company that is financially very valuable. And yet at the same time, you accomplish nothing without great people. And one of the things I wrote in the book is, imagine what a company is like if all the people disappeared. And the answer is no, there's no company. And so on one level, a company is nothing more, nothing less than the people who work for it. And so I think that these types of businesses have both characteristics. On the one hand, you're trying to build a financially successful, financially viable business, because if you don't do that, the business goes away, and then it doesn't work. But you're also trying to figure out, how do you motivate people? How do you recruit great people? How do you create a great environment, a great culture that is a goal in and of itself, but also supports the idea of trying to build a great business?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to what you said before about sometimes having to, downsize or let people go. Somebody told me once, when I experienced it, that's one of the most demoralizing things in a team, high-performing team, is when you've got somebody non-performing and the CEO or the boss recognizes it but doesn't do anything about it. And so that might be something also. Sometimes you have to clean the slate. Maybe sometimes there's a gift behind that. Let's get back into Plato's here, the mezzo. So take us into the penthouse suite, the grand piano, the city lights, the $40 million offer on the table, and the counter you made that still haunts you 25 years later. What happened in that room, and what would you tell the younger Mike sitting at the table?
It was so dumb. I mean, we had struggled for a few years, and all of a sudden we started making progress and were able to raise a bunch of money. And then just at that moment, another company came in and expressed interest in buying us. So on one level, it was exciting. And on another level, I hadn't really gotten my mind around the idea that we would sell the business so quickly, because we were still relatively early stage. So they made this offer, and I just thought that the offer was too low, because they themselves were valued so highly, even though they weren't that much ahead of us in some sense on their entrepreneurial journey. And the consequence is I was too aggressive in my response. The problem was that they really weren't worth what they were worth, and we weren't worth as much as I like to believe we were worth. And it was just not a smart way to handle it on my part. And I ended up basically blowing up the negotiation before, in some sense, it had started. The main thing that I should have done is I should have said, thank you for that offer. We need to think about it. We need to talk about it. I should have taken it back. I should have talked to my dad, who wasn't at the meeting. I should have talked to my wife. I should have talked to our initial investors. And then I should have, at that point, in a collaboration with the others, come up with a reasonable response. But I felt like I needed to respond quickly, which was wrong. And I misplayed it. And so, I wake up sometimes at 2 a.m. still, even though this is more than 25 years ago. And I think, I can't believe how badly I handled it.
Yeah. Well, they say, what do they say? Greatness is forged in the fire. And that was definitely a hot, fiery moment. But it's interesting how you, probably the wisdom you learn from that. I mean, thinking about the book, Mike, you're teaching people with that story. It's crazy. I can't even imagine a $40 million check back then. How old were you at that time?
Oh, I was 33, maybe.
Yes, time. Yeah. Take me right back. I was married at 31. So now I can visualize me at that age. Interesting. Do you think there was a bit of ego in that, or was it just, you're just not enough wisdom and understanding?
I think there was some ego in it, but I think it was mostly misunderstanding the likelihood of success. And so, I mean, we're all of a sudden attracting investment interest from some of the top venture capital firms in the world.
Sure.
And we were making, objectively good business progress. And I thought, we're going to make it. I mean, we're really progressing well. And what I didn't realize was, no, we're very early stage still, and there's an enormous amount of risk, and it might go well, but it might not go as well. And just because you get a really interesting offer one day doesn't mean you're going to get another one for a while. I think that was perhaps the biggest mistake. There's an element of ego in it, but I regard it more as inexperience on my part, and overconfidence, I guess.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Which company was it? Was it the Live Capital or was it?
It was Live Capital. Yeah,
Okay.
Live Capital was
Yeah.
was a small
Great.
business lending marketplace that we were creating,
Gotcha.
the first of
Yeah.
its kind. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, everybody, when you get the book and read it, all the details of all the companies are in there. Mike, feel free as we're talking through the stories to label any of them, attaching it to any of the companies, because there's so many of them. Let's get back into Plato's. You write that a CEO who is forced to reduce headcount, so we're going back to that topic, should not trust their instincts. What did the hardest layoffs of your career teach you about carrying the weight of other people's livelihoods? And how do you keep faith with the people who remain?
Well, one of the things I learned from Bill Campbell was that when you have to reduce staff, you certainly want to be as empathetic, helpful, supportive as you can to the people who are being let go. But ultimately, what's more important are the people who are staying. And you need to make sure that they feel sufficiently supported and that they're being shown a path forward, so that you don't end up watching everything around you crash and burn. It's a very delicate thing to manage. And it's really hard to do, again, because maybe some people are not affected by these types of activities. But most of the people I know are, and certainly I was. You eat me alive, and I never found it easier. Having to reduce staff. It's just a miserable part of the job. But if you don't do it, then eventually no one has a job, and that's worse.
For sure.
So you have to be tough-minded.
Yeah, no, I got to just share some stories back. I promised that I was going to do that here, if it's okay. Everybody, we're at Plato's Garden with Mike Grossman, the author of Failure is an Option, and six companies built and sold in Silicon Valley. When you were telling me that story, I got to be really honest. I felt tingly, and I felt my gut was like my sympathetic nervous system fired up, and I was under a huge amount of emotion, and I'm getting anxious. And it's because I've had a lot of this in my career with people. So I'm not proud of it, but I've terminated probably 420 people in my career. And if you look at my resume, which you may not have, I do this and I have my own company, but I've probably been through 11 mergers, acquisitions, those type of transactions. But what I found difficult was when I worked for large corporation, and you talked in the book about, large versus small and the mentality. I had a board once that was driving this operational efficiency. I was in the financial sector. The board was in Baltimore, Maryland. The company was based out of The Hague. It was like an $8 billion market cap. So anyway, wind the clock forward. I ran the Canadian company, and we had a call center, and they were doing this operational efficiency thing to drive out costs. My business unit was profitable, but I had a very strong board who were driving the heck out of me to outsource. So I had to fire 30 people, my whole call center. And Mike, they were all young women mostly. And this was 2 months before Christmas. And Mike, my office, the corner kind of CEO office is here and the call center's here. I come in every day and one lady's pregnant. And I remember saying to Anna, my wife, who's in the banking sector, that for weeks up to that, I didn't sleep at night. And one of the things I did a lot of in my own development was personality science. And I learned my personality is more intimacy. It's like this. I build deep relationships with you. That's how I live. And so I went through and I did it. And it was hard watching everyone get their severance. And then later, the company discovered that the processes weren't quite ready and didn't fit in the business in the US where they wanted to move it. So we ended up hiring people back. That's why I asked you, how do you live with yourself and survive? For me, it was even more complex because as I just told you, there were some people who really hated me. So I learned a lot through that. And one of the reasons I promote your book and tell people, read Mike's book, because there's a lot of you who are going to go through those type of gut-wrenching decisions. Anything you want to comment?
Oh, me?
Yeah. Just on what I said.
I mean, I really sympathize and empathize with what you just described. It is really very difficult to hurt people.
Sure.
And when you have the unfortunate responsibility of eliminating jobs, that is what you're doing. I mean, certainly in the short run. And you're not just affecting them. By extension, you're affecting their partners, their families. It's a larger community of people, many of whom you'll never meet, but you know they're there.
For sure.
And it's very hard to do. But it's
Yeah.
also the job.
Yeah.
And so, I had as I suspect you did as well, you have to come to terms with the fact that this is part of the job. And
That's right.
and if you want to do the job well, you have to be resolute about this. But then the question is, okay, can you do it in a way which is as humane and constructive as possible? And you try to thread that needle. But it's never easy. It's very painful. And I think I wrote this in the book. I really, really hate it. Of all the parts of the job, letting people go is the worst from my perspective. And, it never got better. It's never gotten better through the years.
Well, thank you, Mike, for your humility. Hold the book up one more time there.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Failure is not an option. So back to what you just said, I think one of the reasons why people should read this book, if you haven't been a Silicon Valley CEO or an entrepreneurial CEO, like there's a safety net when you work for a corporation. Sometimes there's a lot of capital, right? And there's, like in my case, but when you shift into, if you want to know what it's like to be Mike and run a small company, would it be fair to say, Mike, there's more risk, and you've got ups and downs and capital. Sometimes you have to just reset strategy.
I would say that on one level there is more risk. I mean, you're certainly in the early days, you're perpetually running out of money, where you have none to begin with, and you're trying to figure out how to piece it together, and you're at the whim of lots of big forces as you're trying to create momentum out of nothing. So on one level, that's true. On another level, though, I think that often people underestimate the risk associated with being with larger organizations. There's a sense of stability that I think is often an illusion. And so I sometimes believe that smaller companies have less relative risk than it may seem that they have.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm going to put this back on the screen here. And I'm going to play something again, just a little clip, and then we'll weave it into a thought here and have you talk about it. So there's a chapter in the book called "What the Hell is Going On?" Let me just put this on here.
What the hell is going on? You won't understand what's going on in your company if you only ask the people who directly report to you. It was one of the most important pearls of wisdom that Bill Campbell ever shared with me. I first encountered this challenge around the time that Live Capital hired its 40th employee. I had installed a new head of operations who proved to be remarkable. What the hell is going on?
That's all I'm going to say, because people can get the book and read it, or the audiobook. First of all, I want to just say that there's some language in there that I really appreciate, because it's real, and there's also a lot of references to movies and things. You can tell us about why you did that, and this thing about laying off people. I'm going to challenge you here with a coaching question that sometimes gets asked of leaders. I got asked it, is that, where are your fingerprints on this? And the reason why I played this clip is there are some leaders I've met, including me, who stay at the high level. They don't go and find out what's going on through the water cooler other people. So what's your success there? What did you do? Because you're writing about it, find out what's going on by doing this.
I think it's really difficult to be effective in running these types of companies, and probably any types of companies, if you don't really have a good sense of what's happening within the company. How are people feeling? What's going well? What's going less well? And the problem is that if you only rely on the people who directly report to you, you won't actually know what's going on, because they're going to filter the information. And there are various reasons why they might filter it. It's not always Machiavellian. They might filter the information because they don't remember to communicate it. They might filter the information because they have a political agenda, or they might filter it because they don't themselves know what's going on, because they're not talking to the right people. And this is something I spoke to Bill Campbell about in the early years a lot. And his view, which I ended up applying really religiously, was you need to talk to people all across the company. You have to get out of your office. You have to talk to people at every level of the organization, and you have to figure out who you can trust to tell you the truth. And you make an investment in those people and their careers, and being a sounding board, and helping them really forever, in a sense. I mean, not just within the current company, but in their future careers. That's kind of the quid pro quo. But what you get in return is authentic feedback about where there are really issues. And I found it enormously helpful to then be able to fix things, understand what's happening. Because if you don't do that, what inevitably happens is that problems really emerge that surprise you, and you're behind the curve in solving them.
Yeah, I think I wrote a note here about one of the themes was radical honesty and Sugar Sync. You inherited a company with 6 weeks of cash, and team had been fed only good news. You told them the truth. Just comment about that a bit, that because you applied it there. Just talk about that.
Yeah, I was recruited into the company. It was not understood that there were 6 weeks of cash left. And my predecessor as CEO ran the company in an optimistic way. And I've met a lot of CEOs who prefer to be pervasively optimistic and only project that to the board, to the team, even if things aren't going that well. And sometimes they can delude themselves into thinking things are actually going better. So I got in the door, and it was clear that no one had been told about really the full extent of the challenges, to the point where there were no plans that really addressed those challenges. And so my job was pretty quickly to get in front of the company and say, hey, this is going to be tough to hear, but here's where we're really at. Here are the things that are strong about the company, but we have some considerable challenges right now, not the least of which is we're about to run out of money. And we have to therefore address that and understand. What I said to the team is, I'm going to be completely open about the good, the bad, and the ugly from here on forward, because I think that's important, and it builds trust. And I think that people appreciate it. At least most people appreciate it when they're told the truth. There are some people who prefer to be spun, I think, because the truth can sometimes be uncomfortable. But I much prefer to tell the truth, and I think most people appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, if I was on your board and I was one of your directors, I'd want to know the truth for sure. I think there's a great, you're a movie guy. I was going to ask you, how come you watch so many movies? Where did you find the time? And then I went, oh yeah, he's got kids. Maybe that's why.
I mean, I've always been fascinated by movies and TVs and then storytelling, frankly. But a lot of it was cultivated with the kids. So yeah, our 30-year-old now, who's ended up becoming a professional basketball coach, actually went to film school, and for a period of time was Ron Howard's on-set assistant. And so actually that ties into the title of the book, because one of the famous lines from Apollo 13, which was one of Ron Howard's best movies, is failure is not an option. And I sort of adjusted that to failure is an option in the context of the book. But I vicariously got to live through Alex, is his name, my son, through these experiences. And then interestingly, my daughter, Talia, she's the one who I think in the longer run will end up in the film industry. And she majored in art, minored in film, or cinema studies, and does a lot of videography, photography work these days, and editing and so on. So yeah, we're kind of a film family to some extent, and popular cultural references relating to film is sort of always in my mind, and I reflected that in the book.
I think that's very cool. I mean, there's even, I got a whole bunch of little nuggets written on this sheet here. One of them was Ricky Bobby, the Titanic. I mean, I'm just not going to be a spoiler here, but everybody get the book, read it, and you got to give it a review online too. I really love that. Also gives me this insight, because we're critically thinking about you and your brain, that there's a creative side to you. And I get that from talking to you. I want to just point to, I always do this when I'm doing the show, the brain on the back there. You see that brain? It's a human brain replica. I got it because I had a brain injury in 2018. People know my story if they watch my stuff. Fell on my head in the bathtub while doing a 2-day bike ride for cancer research. And if you'd met me back then, Mike, this is 2018. I couldn't walk straight, couldn't talk, broken vision. It's crazy. And I fixed all that, sunk into depression. So I know a little bit about pressure and things. One of the things that I feel with you and reading the book and what you just told us about trust, is there something about you, and I think that's why your book's worthy, but when trust is built between you and I, there's something called oxytocin that's flowing in our brains. And I only say that not to lecture you, but for the audience. Like, since I started talking to you and read your book, it's like, I like Mike. I want to stay a while. And I think that's because the way you talk, you reveal yourself, you take off the performative mask of the silicone guy. I said this to my wife. I said, I'm a little nervous of this interview. He's such a big profile. He's done so much. And there's little Tommy. But you take off that mask and you show us behind it bits of yourself. I failed. I did this. Here's my kids. I think that's really great. And I just want to acknowledge that because it's something in the book that can teach others. Let's get back into Plato's. We're in the last segment of the macro. The world hears Silicon Valley and pictures billionaires and rocket rides. You call that the exception, not the rule. What is the real Silicon Valley and the rest of the world never sees?
I mean, there are thousands of companies, tens of thousands of companies that end up getting founded, and most of them fail. And the ones that don't fail, most of them don't do all that well. Wow. And what we read about in the media are the exceptions, the Metas and Teslas of the world. And those are great stories and great companies, but that's so rare. And it's not what most people's lived experience is. My experience with these various companies has been very much a roller coaster ride. It goes up, it goes down in kind of a random sequence. Sometimes it goes down, then down, then down, and then up. But sometimes it goes up a lot and then it goes down. I had one company that on the verge of great success was legislated out of existence because Congress passed a law that effectively eliminated our business model. I had another company that was on the verge of going public when COVID hit, and as a result wasn't able to go public. And I lamented that. And then because of that, a big company came along and bought us for more money than we would have received had we gone public. I found it to be unpredictable. I found it to be largely out of my control, the overall experience. I think that's the real Silicon Valley for most people. It's a lot of work. It's not glamorous. It's interesting. It's innovative. It's not for everybody. I guess I'm enough of a masochist that it is for me. I mean, it's definitely interesting, but it's just kind of a wild ride. And I think that my experience is more or less typical, is my sense. It's just that most people seem reluctant to talk about it that way. And I thought that was an interesting thing to try to reveal, which is this is what it really feels like. It's not just that it's up and down, but what is the emotional impact? And what are some of the ethical issues that come along with that as you go down the path? That's what it really feels like. And that's what I've attempted to capture.
There's part of me that thinks, going back to brain science or neuroscience, that I'm projecting here. I may be totally wrong, but Mike gets a bit bored. He's curious. He likes to do different things and keep building. Like, why? Some founders say, I've built one, that was bloody hard, I sold it. Why would I go back to it again? And you're doing it over and over and over again. But I look at also the other things. What are your personal likes in your bio and above the movies and all the things you do? Yeah. I think really there is something that drives you that makes you want to keep climbing Everest. Any comment?
I just feel life is a gift, and I want to try to take advantage. I mean, be grateful for that and make every day count. And
very cool.
It's something that has been inspired by some of the people around me. I mean, my father, I mentioned before, he's 86 now. He's really incredibly productive and interesting, and he's always creating things, and that has never stopped. I mean, one of his big projects recently was a exhibit for a big science museum in Oakland. Particle it relates to being able to see particles that are ordinarily not visible. It's called a spark chamber. My wife is incredibly creative. She created she's a magazine publisher right now, which is her latest career focus, focused on sustainable fashion. She hosts swap meets at museums in the Bay Area in which people have a chance to swap clothing that otherwise would be sitting in their closet or would end up in some landfill somewhere, and so on. So, I kind of feel like motivated to do stuff that is interesting and to do stuff, hopefully, that is helpful.
Yeah, that's great.
I wake up every morning saying to myself, okay, today has to count. And then at the end of the day, I'm a hard grader, so a lot of days you didn't make today count enough. but some days I feel like I do, and then I know I'm going to try again the next day.
Well, that's another mental health hack I learned: self-compassion. Give yourself credit when you're hard on yourself. They put up the book one more time there, Mike, just on the
Sure.
screen.
And
Say
Tom,
the
I
title.
wanted to, if it's okay with you, I wanted to just mention quickly that I informally coach or mentor about 8 first-time CEOs right now. And what's been interesting for me to see is that while they're very different from a personality standpoint, and
Yeah.
they all run very different companies, the one common theme across all of them is that they struggle to a lesser or greater extent with their mental health. And I do think that that's one of the things that running
Yeah.
these types of companies is
Yeah.
is unavoidable. It's hard, and so being figuring out how to cope and manage
Yeah.
mental health is a key part of it.
Oh, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I was going to wait, and if you didn't ask it, I was going to bring it up. How do you keep mentally healthy, and how do you check up? I always say get a checkup from the neck up. And like I said, throughout my life as a CEO, lonely at the top, I was under pressure all the time. I had anxiety, generalized anxiety that I never realized I had. And I used to self-medicate sometimes with too much red wine because my wife's Italian. I kind of blame her. That's her fault. But my dad was a alcoholic. He passed away years ago. And so I have to be careful. But when I just have to say this one, because you triggered it, when I hit the bathtub on my head and sunk into depression, I'd never experienced what I did, including suicidal ideation, these weird thoughts. And it scared the hell out of me. So I went into many, many therapies, cognitive behavioral, this and that, and had to learn. And I did a TED talk on it, how leaders can lift the stigma of mental health. It's on my YouTube. But there's very few leaders I talk to who will actually share their journey with their own mental health. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong, or even talk about somebody that maybe they walk beside. And so I think it's great that you're mentoring 8 CEOs. I really appreciate that part of your sharing. Let's go to the macro again. An entire generation of leaders around the world who has been raised on the promise that effort equals outcome. You're telling them something different. If luck and timing play this large a role, how should any leader anywhere measure whether they have succeeded?
I think success is in the eye of the beholder. I don't think that society gets to define what's successful for each of us individually. And that's a hard thing to resist in a way, because we have all these sort of social forces that tell us, well, this is what success is.
Yeah.
And very often that's defined in terms of title or money but over the years, I've come to the view that that's really not all that relevant. It's really, how do you feel about things? I mean, one of the main coping mechanisms that I developed over time was came related to this recognition that you can control how hard you work, you can control how good of a job you do to some meaningful extent, and the people you work with and the environment and the culture. But you can't control the results. There are just too many things that impact that. And the implication of that is you shouldn't define yourself by the results. You should define yourself by the effort that you put in. And I say that again, having had this experience where I was in a company that ended up doing quite poorly at the end, the fire sale, because Congress passed the law.
Yeah.
And it was this other company that ended up doing really well in the end, this very big exit. But I don't think that I or the team did a better job in the big exit than in the fire sale exit. It was just, sometimes things work out better than other times. And so therefore defining yourself by the outcome. I mean, I think a different view would be, well, the $400 million exit, that was success. The other one was failure. I should feel really good about that big outcome, and I should feel not so good about the other. And I don't buy that. I'm actually proud of the company, very proud of the company that had the fire sale exit, because I think we had a great team, a great culture. We did a great job for customers. We tried our best and we did a good job. And the fact that it didn't work out in the end as well as we wanted is really too bad.
Sure.
But I'm not going to, regard myself or the team as being less successful because that's the way it played out. So that's how I view it.
I just wrote something on my paper here. Let me just get another camera out here. I call these Mike-isms. My page is filling up here. Every time you say something, so critical thinking, everyone, Mike says something, and I'm thinking about it, and something else comes up. I was thinking about your dad there for a minute, and challenge me, tell me I'm wrong, tell me that we're open talking here. But I think about your dad and what you just said about, the small sale, the way your mindset is keeps you moving forward. Like you don't define yourself by that. There is a lot of people who struggle with the lack of a lack of belief in themselves. Your father, 86, God bless him, but it sounds like your mom and dad shaped you in some way, because one of the things I learned is our brains are developed in those first early years by grandparents, children, wired in. And I get really frustrated with parenting sometimes because, we will say, we'll say bad Tommy, or you didn't get straight A's. So instead of separating the behavior from the person, parents tend to focus on the behavior, which I believe wires the brain to I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. Whereas I'd rather somebody say, Tom, you didn't get an A on that test, but Dad loves you. But the A, what are we going to do to work harder there? Because I learned that the brain can't distinguish between words and voice. So when somebody says, bad, Tom, you didn't get A's, it wires in. And there's some people that aren't wired. So would that be fair to say that your parents or something shaped you in a very different way?
Yeah. They were very supportive growing up.
That's awesome.
Up. There was a lot of praise, and it caused me to really, I think, believe in myself a lot. Having said that, I think that they had a more traditional view of what represented success. And so some of the things that I ended up learning about dealing with failure and adversity came later. But the base that they helped establish was that I believed in myself. I sort of thought, I can do a good job on this or that, even if I'm not, even if it's new in some fashion, I'll figure it out somehow.
For sure.
And I'm very grateful for having had that.
Good. Applause to great parents. Yeah, there's these unconscious thought patterns that play in leaders. I knew a guy who actually bankrupted his company twice, and when he did the self work, he learned that he was painting. He told me the story. He was painting when he was a kid, and his dad said, "Don't waste your time, throw it in the garbage." And he carried that. He was angry, but he didn't think he was worth himself. So his unconscious mind was actually saying, "You got $1 million cash in the bank. Take it out and screw the company up." He discovered this about part of the early beginnings. There was a guy that you sat beside at a wedding, apparently, by the name of Elon Musk, when he wasn't anybody. And
it wasn't a wedding; it was the Olympics.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It's in.
He had just gotten married for his first wife.
How cool is that?
I met him in Sydney at the Olympics. Yeah, but he wasn't very well known at the time. He was just kind of a.
Is your relationship now where you're connected to him, or
no? Not at all.
So I brought it up only because I was watching those rocket launches, and they had him in the control room, and they actually were talking. The young people there who are now millionaires, some of them. I don't know if you heard this, Mike, but they were talking about why they fail. And they said, we have to push the envelope to break it, to see how far we can go, so we can go higher. And I thought that's exactly what you're teaching us. In fact, you have to fail, right, to be able to.
I just think failure is part of life. It's
awesome.
It's inevitable. I mean, it's in some cases failure can't be quickly rectified. I mean, you're in a company, and the outcome is failure. A lot of times, though, it's little failures along the path, and you can overcome them. And so you build something that in the end is successful. But part of the reason for that is that you had to deal with a lot of failures along the way. I just think it's a pervasive part of entrepreneurial life and life more generally. One thing I will say about Elon Musk, one thing is he was very much in his own head. I remember that. Like, you could see that there was a lot going on that he wasn't actually expressing at the time.
Sure.
So when I met him, I had the impression that he was quite introverted, and he's more outspoken than I would have expected. But you could see that the gears he was working in some sense. He was at a social event watching the Olympics. I don't know what he was thinking about, but he was thinking about a lot of things. That was clear.
Interesting. Well, his eyes go like this, like he's on the spectrum, right? The autism spectrum. Yeah. And I think a lot does go on in that brain. Thank God for him. He's like you. He's somebody who creates the future. 2 more questions, and we're going to honor you with some fun stuff. You close the book. This is called the unwritten chapter. It's the last segment in these questions. So, Mike, you close the book by asking, what you want to be when you grow up, and your answer is Silicon Valley CEO, perhaps the seventh time, why walk back into the fire?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, and also I think I can have an impact. I mean, one of the things that evolved over the course of the 3 decades is that when I started, I mostly focused around how could something big and transformative be created. I would say by my most recent company, I spent more of my time figuring out how could I be helpful to the people in the team? How could I help make the company culture and environment
I see.
great? And so some of that, it comes back to this idea of paying it forward. Some of it is that it's an interesting time. There's a lot of innovative things going on in the world, and I've always been drawn to that.
That's great.
So and also certainly at this age, I don't view it very much through the perspective of risk. I just think it's, and what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that I join company number 7 and it doesn't work out. That's the worst thing. It's not that bad. I mean, it's just not that bad. And the odds are it will work out to some extent.
Yeah.
So
well, we need, I don't want to single you out and ask you how old you are, because that's not fair, but we, I think it's called ageism, and your gray hairs thing makes us think like you might be grandfathered some days, but, almost lost my train of thought there. This thing about the brain, and they say lose it or use it. I think the cognitive pathways, because for 5 years I went through my recovery from my own thing, and if you don't use those cognitive executive function, you lose it. So I believe that keep doing something.
I try to do a lot of things every day. I mean, every day I go on Duolingo and
that's cool.
A little bit of Italian. I'm really bad at it actually, but I do that every day. I go on chess.com and I play some blitz chess every day. And I'm actually
very cool.
bad at that too, but I actually like it a lot. I help out businesses. As I said, I'll probably run another company, and then I have this creative path. The first creative project being this book. I'm now working on a short film actually, which has nothing to do with business. And so that's cool. I just am really interested in using my time as productively as possible, trying to do things that are interesting and helpful, and I find that it's a lot of fun.
Everybody, there you hear it from Mike, author of Failure is an Option, Silicon Valley 6-time CEO, and he's still doing stuff. I think that's a great teaching moment on the show. So if you were to write another book, what might the title be? I'm just kind of challenging it fairly. I tell you, one of the things I thought about, if you know Jim Collins' books, Good to Great, he wrote one called Built to Last. And I was thinking like, man, because in your book, you purposely didn't put your strategies and focus on that. You're teaching lessons. Be really cool with everything you learned about, maybe a blueprint about here's how I build the next one. But anyway, do you have something in mind you haven't told the world yet that you would maybe want to write about?
The funny part is, the honest answer is no. It's
okay.
And the reason is because I've kind of shifted my focus for the moment to creating a film. I think that's the next creative project, and it's nothing like this. It's like an abstract concept that's sort of a metaphor for relationships. And,
that's great.
Kind of an action piece, but still very different. Cool. So I think my next book, I guess, is to say, is a film, not a book.
Well, we'll keep following you and come back and talk about it anytime you want. Let's ask you the last question now. So we're now doing this segment. It's called the Quiet Warrior Torch. We asked the last guest, who is an American, who is an entrepreneur, to leave a question for you, and we told him to come watch the answer. So here's the question. Anything you want to say? He says, make trust the cornerstone of everything you do. Tell us about how you build trust with other people. Anything at all.
I mean, being genuinely honest is, I think, the foundation of that. And so if you not just say that, but walk the walk, and it's demonstrable that you really are authentic and tell the truth, that over a period of time, people will trust you because they'll learn that you can be trusted. But it has to be intentional, I think. I mean, you can model it to some extent just in your life. Certainly in a business context, I think that a lot of that has to do with being very visible and accountable. And so, as an example, articulating objectives that everybody understands, defining success metrics that everybody understands, and then reporting back on results, whether they're good or bad, in an authentic way, and sharing all that information. In other words, being willing to talk about failures, being willing to talk about challenges in a very open way. And I think if you do that, and not in an accusatory sense, not
Sure.
looking to blame anybody, but with a mindset around, okay, how do we solve this problem together?
Yeah.
I think over time, that builds trust. And I think I can have a very big impact.
Great wisdom there. I'm just checking something here. There's somebody's put a comment here. Hold on, let me just check the. I'm just going to put this on the screen here and then see if you want to comment on it. Mike, you manage teams through everything from 400 million to 250 fire sale. What is the number one trait you look for in early stage employees to survive those swings? And how can someone join you?
I look for people who are fundamentally values driven. In other words, you're looking for people on one level who will work hard and are capable and have the relevant experience, but that's not enough in my view. My view is to be very intentional about looking for people who care about values genuinely, that are themselves very high integrity, collaborative, good to work with, empathetic, care about people. And I found that if you have a team of people like that, and I call them in the book the dreamers, folks who are aspirationally oriented, when times get tough, that group tends to stick. They tend to support each other. They're tough-minded and very, very often because they care about things beyond just themselves. They care about
fantastic.
the group.
Well, great answer. There you are to Benaim. If I just said that right there, you can take that away, share it with other people. All right, Mike, now we're going to honor you with a few things. If you've watched the shows, you've probably seen us do this. So did you know you're getting some awards and recognition today?
Actually did not know that.
that makes it even better because it's authentic. It's like, oh, it's not pre-scripted. All right, so let me just close something off. We're still good for time to continue? Just make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I have a little thing I want to have fun with you after we do this. All right, so we're going to put something on the screen here to share and show it to Mike. So stand by. Oh, actually, try this one here. Hang on a sec, Mike. Stop share. I have still some latency with my vision, convergence divergence because of the concussion. So sometimes it's like I'm looking for things in a needle in a haystack. So bear with me for, here we go. All right, what does that look like? Looks like a review, an Amazon review.
Yeah, Amazon review.
All right, so we're going to reveal live here the review. And by the way, I'm trying to get my shopping habits off there, so I'm embarrassed, but you can see what I buy. It's all healthy stuff. Let me take that off the screen. So I'm going to just ask you to sit back and just relax while I read this. So let me stop sharing that. And I'm going to add this because I made you a gift. I've framed it for you. And it's live. That's why I showed you the Amazon. So here goes. So we're revealing live on Amazon.ca. That's the Canadian division or URL of Amazon. It's all global. The review for Mike's first book, Failure is an Option. It's on the screen there. Go on Amazon, read it, heroes. So it's 5 out of 5 stars. The title is 44 Stories That Tell the Truth About Silicon Valley. A business associate passed his book along to me, and I read it as well as listened to the audiobook. I read many business books, and many of them follow the same script. The founder wins, the lessons get numbered, and the setbacks get edited out. This book inspires critical thinking about failure and success. Now, Mike Grossman has run 6 venture-funded tech companies in Silicon Valley across 30 years. And rather than write a conventional memoir or a how-to manual, he gives us 44 short, candid, self-contained stories. Each one carries a single lesson. Each one can be read in any order. The format is the first thing you notice. It grew out of 25 years of writing unconventional holiday letters, one creative experiment per year. You can feel the craft on every page. You can read one chapter in 5 minutes over coffee or savor the whole collection in a weekend. And either way, it keeps you engaged. Now, the stories themselves are remarkable. There's counter offer made in a penthouse suite that he still calls his deepest professional regret. A congressional amendment that erased an entire business model overnight. A layoff that reached his own family team in Kiev that kept working through the war. What separates his book from the shelf of glossy founder stories is its honesty about luck, timing, and the limits of effort. Grossman writes that a leader can do everything right and still fail. And then he shows you, story by story, what the truth feels like from the inside. It's unflinching, dark, funny, and deeply human. If you lead anything at all, whether a startup, a team, family business, read this book. It'll make you more honest, more humble, and far better prepared for the day the story stops going to plan. I give it 5 stars and highly recommend it. Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you, Tom. It's I'm honored by that. Thank you.
There's Mike being emotional. We wanted to see that. I love this part of the show, so we're going to put something else up here now. And this is coming to you. So you know that opening that I did, the opening based on all the research? We framed that for you too. So this is the opening script. You can put it up on the wall or do anything with it. But that's coming to you. And I read it back. I get very emotional just reading it. It's just a brilliant part of your life. And now, seeing that we have you almost crying, we need to get you out crying more. I'm just gonna do one more up on the screen here, Mike. And so I've started doing this only a couple interviews ago. After 350 of these, I thought I want to start giving back more. And you are referable to other people by people like me who know you and know about what you've done. So I'm revealing here something new we call the Quiet Warrior Seal. Now, if you notice the background, it's actually modeled after LinkedIn, and you know about LinkedIn, all those little connections you see. And the Q is actually from an envelope. When I send you something, it's going to have a seal on it. That's my seal. So I'm revealing today a LinkedIn review I'm going to post on your feed. And so here goes. I had the privilege of interviewing Mike Grossman on the Quiet Warrior Show, and it is one of those conversations that stays with you after the camera goes dark. Mike has led 6 venture-funded Silicon Valley companies across 30 years, and his book, Failure is an Option, is the most honest account of that life I think I could find. He writes and speaks about luck, timing, loss, and responsibility with a candor that is rare in leadership circles. What struck me most is the man himself, humble, reflective, generous, with hard-won lessons, and genuinely devoted to the people he leads and mentors. So if you lead anything, follow Mike, read his book, and let his thinking sharpen yours. Congratulations, you are now recommended on LinkedIn by me.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Okay. And I'll put that up after, Mike, and as you know, you get it, and you can refuse it, edit it, tell me to edit it, and I might ask you for one based on what we did today.
Sure.
So let me pull that off there. So these are the suite of gifts. So you have the review. We did one framed and we did one plain in case you need it. And then the opening script. So congratulations. All right. And the last one, and this is really the core of the award, we're inducting you into the Quiet Warrior community. Do you know what challenge coins are?
I don't.
Oh, this is fantastic because some people say, yeah, I do, and I can't explain it. So it comes with a little sleeve in the package. They were started in World War I, and they were basically soldiers would carry them in their pockets, Mike, to commit community to each other. My father was in Alcoholics Anonymous most of 23 years before he passed. They had their version of a coin. First responders, police, everybody has them. And so if you didn't have your coin, if you were a soldier, you would have to buy drinks at the officers' club or still have fun with things like that. Today they do. So people collect them. So I had these made when I started the show. They're hand painted and crafted in the US. That nice. Is the image of the front of the show. They're 3D. The back is actually based on the Hero's Journey narrative by Joseph Campbell, which is really you going and finding deep things in your life, turning it into something, going out and teaching it, changing the world. So congratulations. You're now part of the Quiet Warrior community globally.
Thank you. Thank you.
This will come to you by me at some point. I had one sent out to Philly and somebody opened the mail and stole it. So I'll have to find a way to do it safely. All right. This is usually where we end the show, but I want to take just 3 or 5 more minutes with you, Mike. You gave me permission. So we're going to put something back up there. And let me just come back here to what it is. we're kind of trying this just to pilot something, but your story makes it kind of cool. So I got to get my little paper here. Here we go. I haven't done this before, so I have to read. Just stand by. So, Mike, welcome to the Quiet Warrior AI Lab. What changes if AI enters the story? An occasional thought experiment on leadership, uncertainty, and timing. So we're trying this out here. So, there was a chapter in your book called "Timing is Everything," and that really stuck with me, Mike. And you began with the reasonable CEO belief that if you found the market, hired well, built the product, raised the money, etc., and executed, success was largely controllable. You proved to us in your writing and today that experience taught you that timing can overwhelm all of it. So I'm going to give it to you in a minute to talk about this. So I'm going to go to slide 2 now. All right. So could AI, if it existed back when, help a CEO answer one simple question? Is the world ready for this company now? And I'm treating this as a living CEO model. So actually, I took a course on prompting AI. I built a model. Who knows if it's right? I didn't check it. So I establish a baseline information from your information. AI, then I refresh it on demand with current real-world data. The useful question becomes, what changed, and did the timing signal move? But the model must not be a crude go or stop machine. Positive data can mean proceed. Weak or mixed data may point to wait, adapt, pivot, or stop. So the discipline is this. If you're the CEO and if the business, what changed? Is the need still real? What can I control? What does the evidence support? And that is useful for the CEO watching who may be thinking, I'm not Mike Grossman. What do I do? So if you look at the slide there, I'm just going to gloss over. I'll send this to you. Okay. So this is what the model is: living time model, baseline, on-demand information, etc. And there's 6 signals: customers, tech, technology, money, funding, I guess, competition, outside impacts, and the company. So what changed since the last run if you're running the model? Then 2, the CEO decision path. So the CEOs might be asking, what's changed when we run this periodically? What's changed in the company? Is the need for what we do still real? What can I control? What does evidence support? So AI improves the discipline of judgment. It does not replace the CEO. And so I came up with a little bit too from what you wrote about 5 possible moves you make: proceed, wait, adapt, which you did a lot, pivot, or stop. Okay. And the timing signal is too early. It's the right time. It's too late. It's unclear. Okay. And if the signal is positive, the CEO move is to proceed. So let me go to the last slide. First, the bet: let a small business apply online and get rapid lending decisions from multiple banks. So I'm talking about the company that you formed.
Yeah.
Second reality, what happened? Approval was 20% versus 50% expected. I drew this, AI and I drew this from your info. Conversion was 20% versus 50. Average loan side was 7,500 versus 20K. And many owners still did not trust putting financial information online. Third, the CEO move. The data did not support simply proceeding on the original plan. The discipline choices were proceed, wait, adapt, pivot, or stop. Your path, I believe, unless I missed it, was to adapt. And so Live Capital survived 2001 tech recession. And this is what we found was acquired by Dun & Brad 2005. I think that's right. Value of the Live Capital transaction was this. So the audience lesson is simple. Timing does not make the decision. It clarifies the decision. So I know this is unfair. I've thrown a lot at you, but I'm going to give this back to you and ask you this, Mike. For the CEOs watching this, saying, I'm not Mike Grossman, what do I do? Could a living AI model like this make judgment better by forcing us to examine the evidence for proceeding, waiting, adapting, pivoting, stopping? Or is there still something about timing that ultimately cannot be modeled? Go.
I think both are true. I think that having this type of living model as a collaborator for a CEO would be very valuable. And I think that's reflected in how people do coding these days and how people do writing these days. It's AI, when tailored appropriately, can be enormously powerful as, in some sense, a teammate, a collaborator, an advisor. So, yeah, I think that would be very helpful, and
Very
I think
cool.
it's a good idea. And at the same time, nonetheless, timing still plays a big role, and so I think it would be helpful. But I also think that sometimes things just happen in the world, and they can't be anticipated, and can't be, and because there's imperfect information even on the web, and so AI
sure.
can only do what it can do based on the information that it can draw on, and so the general life dynamic of, if you're in the right place at the right time, will still have a big impact.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for letting me have that discussion. This was a first for us. I'll send you the PowerPoint and also the prompt I built, which is in a Word document. You can feed it into chat if somebody wants to play with it. But really appreciate it. I think the whole thing here is the gut that you have based on this book and all the experience, Mike, is vital behind any model, whether it's accurate or not. So on that note, we're going to give it to you for the last word as we wrap up, and we appreciate you giving us more time today. Anything you want to say? Where can people get a hold of you, the book? Anything at all, Mike?
Well, in terms of where to get the book, it's on Amazon and other leading and independent bookseller sites. I do have a website, failureisанoption.com.
Okay.
In terms of contacting me, people should feel free to email me. It's mikegrossman86@gmail.com. I'd be happy to communicate with anybody and everybody who would like to talk. If they want a sounding board, or I'd be happy to do that. And the only other thing I would add is that it's really been an honor to be on this show. I think
Thank you.
ask very interesting, nuanced questions, and have a broader perspective on life than I'm used to in the context of interviews. And so it's
I'm humbled.
It's been very
Thank you, Mike.
It's very appreciated.
And I received that praise. As you know at the top, you don't get the praise. Let me just play this one last thing, see if it comes up. It's 28 seconds. I don't even know what it is.
The end. Thank you for listening to my audio version of Failure is an Option. This audiobook was recorded, edited, mastered, and distributed by Vaughn Foy, the voice brander at Audio Newborn Productions in Anaheim, California. That's audionewbornproductions.com.
Okay, I thought it was going to be something like a crazy story from a movie or a joke again, but that was awesome. All right, everybody. Mike, don't go away. Stay with me. We're going to wrap this up, everyone. So find that true purpose and passion like you hear from Mike Grossman, and live life, but live the life you deserve and desire. And we'll see you next week on the Quiet Warrior Show. And go get the book and give Mike a review online. And thanks again, Mike. It's been a blessing having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
And by Mike, we're going to take it offline. We're still online here. We still have people watching us right through. It's